Paleontology is full of monsters. The strangest thing it ever found was not a monster at all. It was a mistake. For decades, science had a picture of one of the Cambrian's great failures, a small creature that walked on 7 pairs of stiff, needle-like spikes. It was so strange that the man who named it reached for the word hallucination, hallucigenia, a waking dream, and every line of that picture was wrong. Wrong way up, wrong end forward. Wrong about the one thing that mattered, whether it had left anything behind. It had, and the answer is crawling through a forest tonight. This codex opens on the strangest correction in the history of paleontology. We did not get this fossil a little wrong. We got it wrong in every direction at once. We drew it upside down and left it that way for 14 years. Its head went on the wrong end of its body, and the one thing scientists were surest of, that it was an evolutionary dead end, a freak that left no descendants, turned out to be the largest mistake of them all. 3 corrections, 1 animal. By the end, it had overturned the rule it was supposed to prove. Before we go anywhere prehistoric, start with something alive. Every animal with a head, a gut, and legs that bend traces back to one stretch of time, a burst of invention about 500 million years ago, when the basic body plans of animal life were first drawn up. You are a late edit of that document. Every creature in this story is too. That burst is the Cambrian, and it was a kind of biological Big Bang. In a window of about 20 million years, a blink. In geological time, nearly every major animal blueprint alive today first appeared. Most of what we know about it comes from one place, a gray mudstone high in the Canadian Rockies called the Burgess Shale. 508 million years ago, it was a deep-water sea floor, at the foot of an underwater cliff. The seam was found in 1909 by a paleontologist named Charles Doolittle Walcott. Mudslides off that cliff had buried the seafloor so fast and so soft that even animals without bones left perfect imprints: skin, gut, legs, eyes. Walcott pulled thousands of them out of the mountainside. A 5-eyed thing with a nozzle for a mouth. A swimming hunter the length of your forearm, back when nothing else passed a few centimeters. He did what any scientist does. He filed each new animal into a group he already knew. One small specimen he labeled a bristleworm. The trouble was that the old groups could not hold what the Cambrian had actually made, and reading these fossils is brutally hard. A fossil this flat is a smear in rock, a shadow pressed to a wall. You cannot pick it up and turn it over. You have to decide which way is up, which end is the front, and what each bump and bristle actually was. These were the first animals anyone had tried to read, with no rule book for which way they faced. With the bristleworm, every one of those calls was about to go wrong. Here was the catch. The specimen sat in a drawer until 1977, when a British paleontologist named Simon Conway Morris looked again, and saw at once that it was no bristleworm. Not the Canadia worm Walcott had filed it under. It was something with no place anywhere in the tree of life. He gave it that dreamlike name, and published a reconstruction in the journal Paleontology that would mislead science for 2 decades. The fossil gave him almost nothing. Flattened by 500 million years of pressure, it showed maybe half its own anatomy. He built the rest from judgment. The 7 pairs of stiff spines became legs, rigid stilts. The soft, tube-like limbs became feeding tentacles, waving on the animal's back, each one perhaps a tiny mouth. The stilt walker was born, a creature that stood on knives and ate through its spine. It is easy to laugh at a man who drew an animal standing on stilts. Most retellings do. Look at what was actually on the slab, though. The spines were the hardest, sharpest, most obvious thing in the rock. The legs were soft, flattened, and half of them were still buried in the mudstone, invisible. Given the evidence in front of him, upside down was the careful reading. The mistake was in the rock, not the man. For 14 years, that was the textbook animal, upside down, walking on its own armor, feeding through its back. It became the poster child for how alien the Cambrian had been. Then the fix arrived, from the other side of the world. Then it got worse for the textbook. Through the 1980s, paleontologists working the Maotianshan shales in China were pulling out lobopodians, soft-legged worm-like animals from a slightly older Cambrian sea. These were better preserved, and they were legible. Armored spines along the back, soft clawed legs underneath. The body plan was suddenly obvious. In 1991, Lars Ramskjöld and Ho Xiangguang applied that logic to Hallucigenia in the journal Nature, and the whole animal flipped. The spines were not legs, they were a double row of armor on the back. The soft tentacles were the legs, tipped with tiny claws. The creature that had seemed impossible was an armored trawler, walking the seafloor with its spikes held up like a warning. There was one loose end. In the old fossils, only a single row of legs showed, and a single row tips an animal over. The next year, in 1992, a specimen was prepared more carefully. The rock chipped away grain by grain. A second row of legs appeared, buried in the sediment the whole time. 7 pairs of clawed legs matched by 7 pairs of spikes above them. The dream creature that walked on knives was gone. In its place was something almost sensible, a small, armored worm, rarely more than 3 centimeters long, shorter than your little finger. It picked its way across the Cambrian mud on clawed feet. 2 corrections down, the animal was the right way up at last. One mistake remained, and it was the oldest of all, the lump at the end that everyone had always called the head. Here is the part that should not have been possible to miss. At one end of the fossil sat a dark, rounded mass. Since 1977, every reconstruction had labeled it the head. It was bigger, denser, the obvious choice, a blob where a head should be. The trouble was that it had no eyes, no mouth, and it joined the body in a way that made no sense. In 2015, Martin Smith and Jean-Bernard Caron brought electron microscopes to the original fossils and reported the answer in Nature. The blob was not a head, it was a stain, gut fluid and decay matter that had ruptured out of the animal's back end as the Cambrian mud crushed it flat, and fossilized as a dark smear. For nearly 40 years we had been reading a puddle of the creature as its face. They moved the microscope to the opposite end, the thin, tapering point everyone had labeled the tail. The real head was waiting there. 2 simple eyes, a ring of needle teeth around a circular mouth, and behind it, down the throat, a second set of teeth angled inward. A gullet built to grip food and ratchet it down into the gut. Around that head sat a few slender, clawless limbs, too thin for walking, perhaps for feeling its way, or passing food to the mouth. The final tally on the dream creature: armor mistaken for legs, legs mistaken for decoration, a tail mistaken for a head, and a smear of its own insides mistaken for its face. The mightiest mistake in paleontology is not getting one fact wrong. It is being confidently, carefully wrong in every axis at once. And every correction had been quietly pointing at the same answer. The claws and the teeth were about to say what the animal really was. To see why that mattered, go back to 1989. The biologist Stephen Jay Gould wrote a book called Wonderful Life, and he built it around exactly these Burgess Shale animals. His claim was bold. These strange bodies, he argued, were one-off experiments, trials nature ran once and erased, most leaving no descendants at all. Replay the history of life, he wrote, and a different set of winners walks out. It was not a small idea. If the survivors were chosen at random, then our own branch, the one that runs to fish, to mammals, to you, survived by luck, not merit. Hallucigenia was his star exhibit, the walking hallucination, proof that evolution makes dead ends. Then came the claws. In 2014, Martin Smith and Javier Ortega Hernandez looked at the tiny claws tipping those legs, again in Nature. Each claw was built of cones, stacked one inside the next, a cone within a cone within a cone. That structure is a fingerprint. Only one group of animals alive today builds its claws and jaws the same way: the velvet worms, the onychophorans. Around 200 species of velvet worm are alive right now. Soft, slow-clawed hunters in the damp forest floors of the southern world. Their claws match the ones from the Burgess Shale. The ring of teeth, the throat hooks, the clawed legs, the same kit, 500 million years apart. Hallucigenia was not a dead end. It sits near the base of a living family tree, a stem lineage cousin of every velvet worm crawling tonight, and a distant relative of every animal that molts a shell and runs on jointed legs. Every insect, every spider, every crab. The waking dream that belonged to nothing belongs to a lineage that never stopped. The fossil meant to prove evolution makes dead ends was a beginning instead. We stood it on its head, put its face on its tail, and filed it under failure. Gould's larger point, that chance helps decide which body plans last, still stands. His star exhibit had simply been read backwards from the start. It was the start of a line, not the end of one. The Burgess Shale keeps better secrets than a single corrected worm. Stay in this same ocean, push the clock forward, and the small armored things on the floor are no longer what you should fear. Something is coming up off the bottom. 2.5 meters of it. It has compound eyes, a segmented tail, and a pair of grasping claws held out in front like a question. It rules this sea outright, and it does so long before any fish has evolved a single jaw to fight back. For a stretch of deep time, the deadliest hunter in the ocean is a scorpion the size of a person. How do you become the apex predator of a world that has no jaws? Tethys Codex.